Hey everyone, welcome back to the OnBase Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Moody, and today I'm very excited to have Vincent DeCastro with us to talk about AI and account-based marketing, scaling personalization for enterprise success. Vincent, thanks for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. Great to be here. Good to see you again. Appreciate the invite. Really looking forward to the conversation. Two things that I'm super passionate about, just like you.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you here. We've done workshops together. And for those of you who don't know, which is everyone, you wouldn't know this. This is the second time we've come to record this episode. The last time we were so passionate about AI use cases for account based, we used our entire time talking about it and showing each other examples, which we almost did again today. So this is a very important topic. I know you and I are living this on the daily, but I'd love for you to start with a little bit about your journey. What led you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been involved in B2B marketing for over 20 years. Really got my start when Google was figuring out how to monetize their traffic. So I've been in search marketing for 22, 23 years almost. Really worked heavily with industrial manufacturing companies, and then started the agency in about 2009, almost 2010. And from there, providing a lot of enterprise organizations what we would call lead gen today. So that was kind of the like, how did I get into B2B marketing? And then about 8 years ago, maybe almost 9 years ago now, is when we started to get involved in ABM. And so one of our big clients here in Atlanta came to us. We were doing lead gen for them, and they had asked about ABM. It was something that they were interested in, and demand gen. And so, being the curious bunch of marketers that we are, we were like, yeah, let's check it out. Let's see what it's about. And so we, rolled up our sleeves, got involved, and really never looked back. And I'd say about a year later is when we decided this is what we want to do. This is who we want to be when we grow up. We want to be heavily involved in ABM. My opinion is it's probably the most challenging form of marketing that you can do. It's very complex, especially the lower funnel stuff that we've talked about a million times, one to few and one to one. It doesn't get any more complicated than that from a marketing perspective, in my experience. And so we all as a team just gravitated towards that. And it's still, I'm still super passionate about it today. I love the way things change, the MarTech that improves and gets better and better, AI that we'll talk about in a little bit. Huge impact on the ABM space. So yeah, almost 9 years in ABM specifically, but now I'm really kind of joining that ABM passion with AI, which is just incredibly exciting. It's changing every single day. And then there's, like I talked about last time, Manus, things that just come out of left field that nobody knew about. And then all of a sudden it's the next big thing. And it really, the bar is getting raised by these companies that you just don't expect. They're just, they're small, they're scrappy, they're bootstrapped, but they're doing some really cool and exciting stuff. So, it's, from my perspective, AI is going to be a B2B marketer's best friend. If it isn't already, it should be, but it absolutely would be.
Yeah, awesome stuff there. I love that. I completely agree with you too. And you were hitting on small, scrappy, and some of the disruption that's happening in AI, while also talking about the complexity of enterprise, which I think is interesting because it is very challenging. You hit on one to few and one to one ABM too. I'd love to know what experiences stand out for you that help to shape how you think about the difficulties of one to few and one to one.
Yeah, really one to one is the place where I am most excited to be on a daily basis, just because it's that point in time where you're talking with marketing, you're talking with the sellers, and then you're really trying to extract, like, what's the nugget? What's the exciting piece of interesting information? And so I think, the first time I really did an in-depth strategy session with a marketing team and the sellers that they represent, and doing that kind of process where we're looking for that, what's that spark? What's that one really cool piece of information that we're going to make the whole campaign around? It's going to drive whatever that KPI is. Is it a perception change? Is it, increased engagement from the C level? Is it helping the sellers to open doors? Any number of different things that that one-to-one can do. So really, and I won't mention the name of the client, but, we were talking about their target account, and the sellers were super engaged, which, as you know, as well as I do, it's the most important part of ABM. Like if you don't have that sales engagement, you are going to have a real uphill battle. And as we were talking through like the account and the key people who needed to be influenced, they were talking about a whole other initiative with their innovation department within the target account and what they were doing with them. And we latched onto that and we dug into it and came up with this, what they agreed was an awesome idea, which was, hey, let's do a joint event. Let's do a joint event with you and this client that you're trying to build a new relationship with the CEO. And I mean, it just evolved from there. And I mean, it was amazing. From there, it led to a super close relationship that culminated with the CEO actually joining their executive team at the Super Bowl for like 4 days. And so, just to see those actual results though, like to me, that's what's super awesome. You go from this like interview process, you come up with that big idea, right? And that's what the content and the channels and the design all feed off of. And then you execute it. And to see that come to fruition and exceed everyone's expectations that's what it's all about to me. That's what I love about this.
Yeah, and seeing the Super Bowl is pretty cool. That's always a good thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
nice perk there. Well, look, for those who aren't in enterprise, this is obvious, but sometimes we're talking years for the sales cycle, not days, years for some companies. I'm curious, Vincent, what are your biggest learnings or takeaways from working with the high value, long sales cycle accounts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, the first thing is making sure that you have alignment inside of the organization, because what I have seen be a big challenge for, mid-market startup companies, they're operating oftentimes with smaller budgets, but having the ability to go from the starting point to the finish line is absolutely critical. And so not getting, sidetracked, not seeing another shiny thing and going off that direction, but being able to really have the discipline to create the plan and then see it all the way to fruition. And, that saying, what is it, fail fast, is, I think, a big part of this process, especially for the mid-market companies that, they're just trying to understand ABM and how does it work in their organization and how do they scale it. Just get in there and do it, right? And see it all the way through. Obviously create the KPIs, but you want to be able to get the mistakes out of the way as quickly as you can. And then really dedicate the next 2, 3, 6 months to actually learning what's working, what's going to be, the best fit for the clients that you're going, or the target accounts you're going after. So I would say, don't spend too much time trying to make it great. Start with good, get into market, run the campaigns all the way through the finish line, and then learn. That's, to me, the essence of like truly getting ABM under your belt and scaling inside of an organization.
All right, scaling. There's my segue. You gave it to me. I'm going to ask you the most difficult question, Vincent. So we've failed fast. We've gathered our learnings. We've had some successes and we've had the communication around it. We're aligned. And now an executive comes to us and says, hey, that's great. You did this for 20 accounts. I need you to do that for 200 or 500. And it's the classic problem of how we scale one to few and one-to-one strategies in an enterprise level account. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see there? And then how do you work to offset those?
Yeah, those are good. They are tough questions and they're good questions. And that's the kind of thinking that you need to apply to this stuff, because you want to have an idea of where your challenges are going to lie as you're setting out your roadmap. We have our own proprietary roadmap for ABM maturity that takes these things into account. But the biggest challenges, and this is the crazy part, they haven't changed since we've been doing ABM here at the agency, is really the ability to, number one, get the assets as personalized as they need to be, depending on the stage of the funnel. So if it's one to few, it's not super hard, right? It's not a huge lift, but when you get into one-to-one, and it's a big, like you're going after enterprise targets, 2-year sales cycle, 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion contract values, you are sending a lot of stuff. You're personalizing a lot of stuff. And that's the place where people run into roadblocks. They hit the wall. I wouldn't say it's easy to do 20 strategic accounts over the course of a year doing one-to-one. It's not easy, but if you talk about really, turning that volume up, that's where you run into how am I going to get my value propositions, my team cards, my, proposals, let alone all of the other traditional stuff like emails and white papers and case studies, hyper personalized, not just personalized. Like we've got to look beyond personalization to hyper personalization. But and there's probably two key pieces. There's the email. So how do you scale the email if now you're trying to influence decision makers across the executive level? And then the influencers that will also be feeding up to them. How do you learn what they care about? How do you learn what their challenges are and then incorporate what your solutions are in the right sales framework that speaks to them based on their personality? How do you do that at scale? And that's where AI comes in, right? Like that's the part that is so exciting to me and to the agency in general is like you now have the ability to scale and remove those factors and do better. Like that's the crazy part to me, Chris, is like you're not just like, hi, John Smith at, company XYZ. I know as a CTO, you wrestle with that's so lame, right? You see those emails and you just hit the delete button. We're talking about truly hyper personalized stuff. And so doing that at scale absolutely requires either a 100-person team or AI. That's part of a process, an AI automation process. So connecting, the chat GPT piece, creating your custom agents, having that, connected with N8N or with make.com so that it actually completes tasks. And that's the part I think where marketers have to start to look at. Like you're trying to go from I'm into ChatGPT and I'm prompting and, it's taking me 2 hours to get the output I want, but you still haven't gotten the thing done. You still haven't completed the PDF document or the emails at scale. You need AI automation that can actually take a lot of the human stuff out of the way, keep the human in the loop, but then do the tasks for you. And so, giving you that time to be able to do the stuff we both like to do. Every marketer likes to do the thinking, the strategizing, the what's next. How do I get better? How do we get, more out of what we are doing currently? So that to me is the biggest challenge in lower funnel ABM. But the exciting part is AI is going to play a giant role in removing that roadblock.
Yeah, great stuff there. You actually answered the question I was going to ask you next, which is phenomenal. My brain was going to the VH1 pop music. Remember the little bubbles that would come up to be like, check this out, check this out. A few things were coming to mind there. One, in Demandbase, we have account summaries. Now that's an agent to go and try to help with this. So I do love how you're thinking about AI there. There was also another podcast episode we did with Sam McKenna, which was about Show Me, You Know Me. So some of the combination of AI and human elements, I do think this is where it can get really interesting because it may not be me doing research myself for 50 accounts. I could use AI to get me 90% of the way there. And then even if I don't have an agent to tell me, hey, Chris is a Duke fan. This was Sam's example. Sam was a Kentucky fan, unfortunately. I do have a Duke poster. Yeah, with Christian Leitner right there. So that the most hated person in the sports world to her. So she said, look, if I'm sending you an email, it's going to say Duke plus Christian Leitner plus I hate you plus go to market challenges. And she said, that will take me 10 seconds because I know you, and then I'm showing you I know you, and then you could have some AI to assist you on that. But I'm curious if you're seeing with AI personalization some of the combination of those human elements, because I do think there's an opportunity to really stand out even at scale.
There's no doubt. And that's what I mean by hyper personalization, is to show that you actually know the person. Now, I didn't personally do the research, but using AI to shortcut that process, because that's just, I don't want to make it sound like anyone could do the research, but, oftentimes these are the tasks that take up a lot of bandwidth that could be done by, a manual process. And so, using tools like Humantic AI, I love Manus. That's my own personal favorite. So, really letting the tools do the research on the LinkedIn profile and finding additional information about that person online, via their social media channels and posts. And then incorporating that into the framework of the messaging is where we're at right now. So we're taking storytelling framework books, so like Magic Words, if you're familiar with that, which then matches that personality type with the appropriate sales framework, so that you're starting out with the idea of like, maybe that headline appeals to you, but maybe it wouldn't appeal to me. Like, I'm not a huge watching sports fan. I like to go, ride my bike in the mountains or compete at bike races, that kind of stuff. I don't watch a lot of like sports on television, but if you were to come at me with a story or a headline about mountain biking in Moab, which is one of my personal favorite rides, you're going to get me 100%, no doubt about that. And that's the kind of stuff you talk about. Hyper personalization that AI can bring to the table is just that kind of thing. And it's the scalability, like you mentioned. How do you scale that? And it's going to be connecting tools. It isn't one tool. Well, eventually it probably will be, but it isn't going to be like ChatGPT doesn't do that on its own. You've got to then connect ChatGPT via, make.com, for instance, which is a webhook tool, with the other pieces that are going to be involved. You're going to create custom agents that are going to do a piece. And that's why Manus is cool, right? Because Manus has the wrapper around all of these tools. And so Manus does the task assignment to different agents to go out and you do the research, you create the framework, you do the writing, and then it aggregates everything and it comes back to you with this completed process or thing, right? So it actually does, that's the mind-boggling part to me, is like it actually does the stuff. So I don't have to take it and say, okay, now I'm going to take that file, I'm going to send it to my copywriter and they're going to revise it, and then they're going to send it to the designer, and then they're going to send it to the marketing operations person. Like the whole thing can get done essentially from an AI automation process.
World's changing fast, Vincent.
Yeah, man.
I don't want to overwhelm people, but that is a tool to definitely check out. I mean, look, check with your privacy team too. You and I have talked about this. Make sure it's something you don't want to put sensitive information into. I'm curious if we come back to the long timeline. So a lot of what we're talking about is that hyper personalization. There's an element of time there. So knowing what is timely. When we have 12 to 24 month sales cycles where we may be communicating over a long period of time, how do we make sure that we're effective and recent with any information we're sharing?
Yeah. And that's where the humans, I think, are always going to play a huge part, right? Like that's why my first reaction to Manus was like, oh my God, you don't need me. But the reality is that real strategic, like the situation you're talking about, requires a human to think through that. And so the critical piece is one-to-one's all about relationships. Like, that at the end of the day is what you aim to do with one-to-one. I know everyone's got a little bit of a different opinion. I look at ABM. My definition is what your very best account executive would do if they had unlimited time, energy, and resources. That's what ABM in my mind should be. It isn't, brand, but it can be top of the funnel, can be brand. I see companies kind of doing brand at one-to-one, which is, I think, in all fairness, one form of one-to-one. But when I think about strategic one-to-one ABM, it is about the relationship. And so there should always be that like constant checking in and collaboration. What's changed from the seller's perspective? Has an executive, moved out and a new one's coming in? Have we improved that relationship? And that's a key metric that we track for KPIs and one-to-one is, that relationship going from red, if that's where it is, through yellow into green, which indicates, we're making some significant headway. We're improving that relationship. And at the end of the day, I think that is the very best thing that one-to-one ABM can provide. If you can secure a good, close relationship with a meaningful executive at an enterprise organization that was either, brand new to the organization when you started, or they had a negative perception about what you do, and you've moved that to a place where now, they'll text you back or they'll answer your phone call if you call, that's huge, right? That's in terms of making deals. Like AI isn't going to replace that, I don't think, anytime soon.
You crushed the definition of ABM too. That's one of my favorites. I will certainly pull that quote and use it myself, even if it's not the corporate channel. What your best rep would do with unlimited time, resources. That was awesome. I love that. What about targeting? So we know that one of the most challenging parts of account base has been building our ICP, picking the right accounts to approach. How is AI helping to handle the complexity of enterprise targeting?
Yeah, that to me is let's call it low hanging fruit, right? Because you take the human feelings out of it, and I think that you see a very different picture of the accounts that you would pick just solely based on the data. Now, a whole nother question or conversation would be, what's the quality of our data? Is it good enough to rely on? Assuming that it is, using AI, a tool like Manus, or an automated configuration of a number of different tools, is going to give you what I've seen to be much, much better account selection process. It's that old engineering axiom: garbage in, garbage out. And sometimes it's let's pick accounts by committee. Let's get sales folks to give us their vanity logos that they really want to do business with. But what's the behind the scenes? What's the growth opportunity? Are they actually a good fit for us to partner with? What's the historical on the account? Have we had them before? How did that go? What are the things that kept us from working with them in the past? All of these different, my mind is like columns that come out of Salesforce. And, the more information you can pull in to help you to make that informed decision based on what's the needs of the business. And so to me, it always starts with, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Like, what is the goal of the ABM campaign? Not leads, right? Like ABM, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and other people would disagree, ABM isn't lead gen, right? And that's why I focus on the relationship part. ABM is really designed to be able to improve those relationships. So what are the factors that we know we need to incorporate to pick the right accounts? And it's got to start with, like, what is our true goal for this campaign? What is it we're actually trying to do? And it has to match the style of campaign, the funnel stage, and then, pulling info from Demandbase, assuming that they're smart and they're using Demandbase for their ABM platform, so much data in there that maybe they don't even know is in there, that we can then merge that with Salesforce to really be able to choose the right accounts. But my experience is it's got to be based on like true real world business objectives.
Real world business objectives. I love the real world thing. I want to twist your arm a little for a real world success story before we jump into the lightning round. So we'll hit quick hitters next. But what's your favorite real world success story where scaling one to few or one to one account based with the help of AI has gotten you exceptional results?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been focusing a lot on a slightly different sector lately, and they're a little bit less mature than what I would call the traditional ABM company. So they're not SaaS, they're not tech. They're definitely a little bit behind the curve, and so they have a lot of these companies are global. So they've got like sales teams in all sorts of different territories: North America, South America, EMEA, APAC. That presents in and of itself really, really unique challenges, especially when you're talking about that one to few process. And so running pilot campaigns in strategic territories to understand like what works, right? What's the goal of the campaign? In this instance, it was what we call the win back campaign. So old clients that no longer were purchasing from them were the targets of these campaigns throughout these 4 different regions. Understanding what works, and then once you understand what's going to be valuable to the customer, it isn't, my experience is you want to make sure that you're showing them that you understand what their challenge is. This isn't groundbreaking information. And then what is your solution that can help overcome that? Not how great we are, not we're the biggest, not we're the oldest, but how do you truly solve their challenges? And then team cards, great instance. We created an AI automation process that actually will update the team cards based on the fields coming out of SFDC. So adding in the right sales team members, the right language is a huge piece, right? And so there's some, countries in EMEA that they don't mind English, and there's other countries in EMEA that they want to see their native language. So using an AI automation process to be able to create these team cards and update them based on the regions and the sellers was huge, because it had taken us 3 weeks to do, I think, like 3 different companies to start with. And so we cut that down from a 2 to 3 week process all the way down to basically in 2 days. And that was like a phenomenal win, because that allows you to do that scale. Like, you can't do the scale without it. right? You might have the aspirational, like, hey, we want to be able to do this kind of play globally. It's great, but how do you do it? How do you get there? How do you actually make it, foundational for your organization? AI automation has proven for us to be the real game changer in that regard.
I love that. We're going to jump into the lightning round. So this is going to be a challenge of restraint here, right? If
Oh,
we're in an
geez.
elevator, we have our 30-second sound bites. The first one, you've hit on this a bunch, but I'd love for you to kind of zoom out and give us that 30-second sound clip. How is AI going to change account-based go-to-market?
Wow. It's going to make it streamlined, efficient, fast. That's the key to me for ABM campaigns is get into market quick. That's absolutely the most important part. And it's going to make that doable. So it's not going to replace humans, but it is going to make us better.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I'm pro human on this too. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
like
Me too.
yeah, I mean, we have to learn all these tools. We do. We have to keep up, but it is going to make us better at our jobs. So being ignorant is not a good strategy. So I'm
No,
with you there.
I agree.
What about the biggest challenge in B2B sales? If you could only pick one thing, what do you think is the hardest thing to do today?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think to know where you need to put your time. That to me is really the foundational, fundamental component of one to many and one to few is it should tell you as a salesperson which accounts are in market and where should I put my time.
Perfect. Nailed that one. Yeah, we had an executive offsite. We were talking about prioritization so much. I mean, knowing where to spend your time, huge focus for everyone, not just sellers. All right. We have a couple other quick ones. You know this one because you've listened to episodes before, but we love to ask tech recs, your favorite tools. So you have mentioned Manus, that's Manus. What are some of the favorite pieces of technology you're using today?
Yeah, Manus is up there. Manus is like my new best friend. And then Humantic AI is great. And I'm sure a lot of folks that are watching this are familiar with Crystal Knows, and it's a great tool. Don't get me wrong, but Humantic is, in my opinion, even more useful at scale because I can just go and grab a bunch of LinkedIn profiles, drop them into this tool, and it's going to give me the important stuff I need to know about that individual. So it's going to give me, your DISC personality, the big 5 personality traits, how to sell to you, what you care about. Is FOMO a thing for you? Is it data driven? Like these are I think the pieces that we have now the ability to start to incorporate at scale.
Love it. What about good reads? So we expand reads. We're generous here. That could be book, blog, newsletter, podcast. What stands out to you as the most helpful today?
Yeah, I will say, and I can't remember the person's name. I saw them, they posted on LinkedIn. They're in our industry. And she mentioned like 5 storytelling framework books that I was like, oh, that's really cool. And so I started to check them out. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to read all 5 books. So I'm able to go to, Manus and say, hey, give me the abridged high level version. And it's really, really interesting. We all talk about this, I know, but like we're all humans at the end of the day and we're trying to sell to other humans and we're consumers. So, we're not robots in the B2B space that we then like take off that coat and go back to the B2C world when I'm at home and shop a different way. We all are influenced by the same stuff. So the idea that, that words matter that much and how you frame stuff and that it's possible to really frame things up that is going to make it easier to sell to somebody just based on what they care about and how they assimilate information. So if I come at you with, hey, Chris, if you don't do this today, you're going to experience this kind of loss. And if you experience that kind of loss, this is going to happen. And you're not concerned about that. And you're just going to be like, okay, well, I don't really care. It's not an issue to me. I'm more concerned about what's the ROI over here and how does it, long-term play into my plans. That's a huge miss. If I can start to figure that stuff out in advance and I'm selling to you in the style that you're willing to be sold to, that's going to make my job even easier. So those storytelling frameworks for sales, gold as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome. What about good people? Who inspires you in the B2B space, especially?
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I think Gabe for sure, just by virtue of like the quality of the stuff that is put out on LinkedIn all the time. You, because you're an OG in this space, you've been around forever. I mean, starting way back when, like there isn't a person in the industry that you don't know or what's going on currently. So, I mean, definitely some of the folks that I look to. Outside of that, there's some folks that I would say are competitors of ours that I'm always kind of stalking their LinkedIn. I'm not going to mention any names, but I'm always impressed with their information. On the client side, we have some clients who are just super duper smart. Jason Lewis over at Chemours, which is a spinoff of DuPont, is one of my favorite people for sure. I'll shoot your or his LinkedIn over to you after this, so you can maybe reach out to him and get him on here. But yeah, I mean, super super smart guy. Really younger and taking bringing a fresh approach to an industry that's over 100 years old. So
outstanding. Well, checks in the mail from Gabe Rogel and I. So when you get those checks, thank you for mentioning us. No, I'd do the same. I'd put you on that list too. And then this is the hard hitting journalistic question here. The most important one of all, Vincent. How could everyone get in touch with you after this episode?
Yeah. So our website is abmagency.com. Couldn't be much easier than that. You can call me, obviously, but I'm not going to put my phone number out there. Email is vincent@abmagency.com. So yeah, we just relaunched the website. Oh gosh, I want to say 2 months ago, maybe. So it's something that I'm real proud of. It definitely represents who we are now and what we do. So I would definitely drive folks to check out the website and see what's in it for them. There's a lot of cool information. I think the way we've segmented it is interesting. So there's kind of 3 different tracks. Either you're new to ABM and haven't done it, you've got some experience, or you've been doing it for a while. And there's always ways we can help people to improve, even when they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years.
Love it. Outstanding. You nailed it, sir. Great to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Chris. Really, really always a pleasure.
Thanks. Talk soon.